talked about schools, but even if you just walk
Very
out...
complicated agenda.
Does it actually mean anything at all?
Okay, this is right and wrong, but it doesn't actually follow it.
We've been in recession for a few years now.
Have any of you been impacted?
Real stories,
We learn from one another.
real issues. Is Islam a threat? And real views. This is Real Talk.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Beloved viewers of MTA, welcome to another episode of Real Talk Africa on Muslim Television Ahmadiyya. I am your host, Zafrullah Lamino. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing a very important topic that resonates deeply within the fabric of Islamic principles: social justice. Social justice has become an increasingly prevalent issue in our society today. As globalization connects us together, we are deeply confronted with inequalities and injustice that spans across countries, cultures, and faiths. Nearly half of the world population, over 3 billion people, are living on a $2.50 per day. This is according to World Bank poverty and equity data. Over 42% of the global population living in abject poverty. Against this backdrop, our conversation today is going to be centering around how Islamic teachings and principles provide guidance and solutions to this prevalent issue. On this episode today, we are honored to have esteemed guests from diverse disciplines who are going to be sharing their perspective and expertise on the different dimensions of social justice in Islam. To my immediate right, I have Barrister Bashiruddin Abdulsalam, a legal practitioner at the Ministry of Justice, Lagos State, Nigeria.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The next guest is Maulvi Abdul Mujib Ayub, a missionary of Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My third guest today is Mr. Abbas Agbaje. Mr. Abbas Agbaje is a managing consultant at Impact Crest Consulting. He is an environmental and social sustainability expert. He is also a Commonwealth scholar.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I also have my engaging audience with me here that's also going to be contributing to the discourse of social justice in Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
But before we get the conversation started, let us listen to the voice of the people. Today, I will be gathering people's thoughts, opinions, perspective on how Islam promotes equity, fairness, justice, and compassion in the society. Join me to find out.
Social justice is the fairness in relating to others in our environment, regardless of their race or gender.
Where there is no justice, there can be social interaction which is acceptable by all. So, to achieve this, we must ensure that there is justice. Where there is justice, where there is equity, definitely there will be peace. And the social interaction between people or among people will be very adequate.
Discrimination, nepotism, and other problems, in the end, they lead to injustice. And I mean, in a society where people value justice and fulfilling each other's rights, there will not be any problem of racism.
The leader in the community must adhere strictly to the rules of justice and equity within the society.
So these days, we discover that the rich lord it over the poor. The leader did not consider the followership did not even adhere to the directive of the leaders. So everyone in their own perspective are selfish in nature.
The parents at home teach their children how to make justice. That is, the father must be the one who will lead in dispensing justice within the family. And from one family to the other, if all of us have the same belief and exhibit the same traits, then definitely we'll be able to have good community. In that community, there will be peace, there will be social justice.
Welcome back. We've listened to the voice of the people. We've heard their opinions. Now, I'll be asking Barrister Bashiruddin Abdulsalam, what does social justice mean?
Permit me to break it down in order to have a better understanding of social justice. Justice in simplicity means fairness. While social justice in simplicity will mean fairness as it is manifested in a given society. Now, to broadly define it, then it will mean that an idea where every person, regardless of background, status, have fair and equal rights in terms of economics, politics, and opportunities within a given society. So we can therefore say social justice promotes 4 cardinal principles. 1, human rights. 2, access. 3, participation. And the last one, equity. When we talk of human rights, we are talking of rights that every individual must have access to. It must be protected at any point in time in any given society. It is a right that we have by virtue of our birth. Vis-a-vis right to life, right to dignity of human person. You cannot take somebody's life as a right. You cannot treat your fellow human being inhumanly. It is wrong. Freedom of speech, you have that right. Freedom to education, you have that right. Where all these rights are being guaranteed and protected, then we can say social justice reigns in such society. Secondly, access. Every human being must also have access to essential amenities of life. Nobody should be denied, or somebody having the opportunities of to the essentials, amenities of life, food, shelter, and education, while other people are not having it. Social justice prohibits such situations. So what social justice says is that every one of us, whether poor, rich, whether you are from different cultural background or religious background, you must have access to essential needs of life. Thirdly, participation. Nobody should be marginalized from participating in anything that has to do with the affairs of everybody in a given society. The voice of the rich must be heard, must be heard. The voice of the poor must be heard. So nobody should be seen as being, to be denied of hearing his views in any given society. And the last one, equity. A lot of people take equality with equity, but they are really different. But the real difference is that equity puts into consideration the difference in human nature and give equal outcome at the end of the day. Permit me to just give a very similar scenario.
Okay.
There are 3 people. They want to watch football match, but there is a fence that blocks their views. Each of them must have access to one box. There are 3, but they are not of the same height. We have the tallest, the middle one, and the shortest one.
Yeah.
Now, the tallest does not even need that box to see, to watch the ball. But the shortest, even with that box, he will not still see. So equity says that the tallest should give that box to the tallest, to the shortest, so that the shortest can see, the middle person also can see, and the tallest man also can see.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Barrister. Movi Sahib, as you've heard, the definition that Barrister gave us, a comprehensive definition of social justice, I want to ask you, what is the concept of social justice in Islam?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. When we talk about Islam, we talk about two major rights. One, the rights we owe to our Creator, Allah the Almighty, and the other one is the rights we owe to our fellow human beings, the creatures of Allah the Almighty. Now, in Islam, social justice, Islam does not preach. Islam preaches even beyond justice. Allah the Almighty states in Surah An-Nahl, verse 91, He states, Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba. Allah the Almighty states that surely Allah enjoins justice. That is adl. When the Prophet Muhammad was explaining this verse of the Holy Quran, he explained saying that justice means that if someone does good to you, you should also return by doing good to the person in the same manner, the same level. But now, the second stage, which Islam preaches, is ihsan. Ihsan is a second level, talking about someone doing good to you. Now, when you are to return or you are to repay the person, now you pay back in a better way. You pay back in a way that is better than the good the person has done to you. Now, the third level, the highest of all, is ita'i dhil qurba. That is doing good to someone like kindred, like family member. That is, while explaining this, the Prophet ﷺ gave the example of a mother to her children, how a mother will treat her children. A mother will take care of her children out of sheer love, which she has for her children. Even at gunpoint, she would not maltreat them, but rather she would treat them well, and not because of any gain at all. This is the level, the highest level. That is a level where you take care of people, you cater for their needs, and you maintain good relationship with them, not because of any gain at all, but rather because of the sheer love which you have for them. This is the highest point which Allah the Almighty expects man to reach when it comes to a relationship with one another.
Thank you very much, Maulvi Sahib. Now, Mr. Abbas, there has been a lot of voices around gender injustice. There's also spanned a lot of different radical groups coming up, speaking up against gender injustice. So, from your perspective, how do Islam, resolve the issue of gender injustice?
Thank you very much for the question. In terms of, the evolution of jurisprudential, opinions over time, some have analyzed, positions of scholars and even modern scholars, classical scholars and modern scholars, to be that you now have about two different ways of viewing issues around gender. One is the protectionist approach, and the other is the egalitarian approach. Now, the protectionist approach speaks to, follow the idea that if you apply the sense of equity, women are considered perpetual minors in the society, such that they are unable to take certain decisions on their own without the complementary rule of a male counterpart, whether it's their father, it's the son, it's the husband, or a brother. You would see that this approach has been maintained over the years, and essentially, if you take example of Saudi Arabia, Saudi only recently allowed women to drive themselves in 2017 or 2018. And they will draw from the textual, documentation of the Islamic jurisprudence to say, by Islamic jurisprudence, women aren't allowed to do certain things. They have certain roles, which meant that they are primarily meant to be caregivers at home. Now, the egalitarian approach is saying that that is a limited perspective in terms of gender roles. So the egalitarian approach is saying that we need to consider how times have changed for us to say that this should be the roles of men and women. And as such, the perspective that is being pushed by this approach is that women should have equal right as men. Now, just like Barrister said, yes, there is that context, between equity, and equality. What the egalitarian approach is saying is that it is about equality in terms of opportunities and outcome.
Yeah.
Not that equality in terms of, what nature has endowed each person with.
How does Islam, prefer solution to all this, to this issue about, equality, equity, most especially in relation to gender?
The question about gender has really been addressed in Islam. When we look at the Holy Quran, the culture of the Arabs pre-Islam was that they took a girl child as, some of them as part of their culture took the girl child's birth as something ignominious, right? And they really take it really bad. And, sometimes the practice is that they go ahead and bury the female child. And the Quran has actually foresaw what will happen in these latter days, this modern era. The Quran asks that, the Quran prophesied that, وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ. And when the killing of the girl child will be questioned, بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. For what sin are they, killing this girl child? And it tells us that the Quran, already demonstrates to us that God is a fair God. In fact, one of the chapters of the Quran is named Surah An-Nisa, which also demonstrates that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not discriminate between his creatures, whether it is male or female. You have in Quran chapter 33, verse 36, where Allah stated up to 10 different spiritual status that both men and women, as-sa'ima, as-sa'imun, as-sa'imat, al-mutasaddiqin, al-mutasaddiqat. Allah mentioned all of these to demonstrate that we all, whether male or female, have the capacity to attain spiritual height, spiritual status. So what Islam has done is to help understand that the Quran says in Surah Al-Hujurat that Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin, that we have created you from male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا, and we have made you into tribes, وَقَبَائِلًا, and we have made you into nations and into tribes, لِتَعَارَفُوا, so that you can know one another. Inna akramakum, surely the most honorable among you, inna akramakum inda Allah, in the sight of Allah, atqakum, the person who is most fearful of Allah, the person who is foremost in observing the right, like Maulvi said, of Allah and of Allah's creature. So Allah tells us that the distinction between people, whether male or female, is not on the basis of their gender, is on the basis of their actions. So Islam has helped us to know that whether male or female, we're all the same.
Okay.
We're all the same. And the Quran tells us you're not going to enter the Jannah whether it's because you are a male or a female. It's about what you do. So Quran places an emphasis on what you do. وَأَن لَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى وَأَنَّ سَعْيَهُ سَوْفَ يُرَى. Allah did not say it's by your gender. So Allah helps us understand that as Muslims, you must recognize that women play a key role, men play a key role, but no role should have conflict.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbas. I'll be moving on to Barrister Bashir. We live in a multicultural, multi-ethnic society. So how can we all work together to achieve this social justice that we are all clamoring for?
The key word for this is respect. We all have to respect what social justice stands for. And what are we saying in this instance? We have to respect everybody has the right, and that right must be respected, regardless of social, whether from different cultural or religious background.
What about, you said every right must be respected. What about if you feel that this person what he's saying is wrong, or what he's doing, is tarnishing the image of, for example, my religion or something? So in that regard, how do you want me to respond to that kind of person?
Now, I'm coming there.
Okay, good.
But first, we have to respect each other's religion, each other's culture. But it's always good before you want to say you want to respect somebody's culture or religion, you need to learn. Sometimes I've always said this, we need to learn more about our own culture and about other people's religion. Because it is when you learn, when you know, that you can know the limit and you can know what other people's religion stands for. And you can really know in what manner you will not disregard other people's religion and culture. What I'm trying to say in essence is that it is when we are able to learn and know about other people's religion and culture, we will be able to come together and live in peace.
Thank you very much. You've made a very valid point that for us as individuals and as communities, for us to be able to achieve social justice, we need to first respect one another.
Yes.
And for us to be able to respect one another, we need to learn more about ourselves, learn more about our culture, about our religion.
Yes.
That will give us the opportunity to respect.
Yes.
But even though we have differences or we have different opinions,
we can have unity in diversity.
In diversity.
If we learn.
Very good. Thank you very much, Barrister. Now, Movie-Saab, can you tell us the effort of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community in promoting social justice in our society?
The Ahmadiyya Muslim community would promote peace and social justice with all what we have. Because although we do not have the political power and we do not have enough resources, but then with the little we have, we try as much as possible to promote social justice. And an example of such is that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, even with its motto, love for all, hatred for none, we try to live by it. And not just that, we try to promote social justice with our mouth, our hands, and even our hearts. This is how we promote social justice. And when I say by our hands, I mean with our actions. For example, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community established an organization, the Humanity First. Humanity First is an organization that under it there are different programs to assist the less privileged in the society. For example, under it we have the gift of sight, where they treat people for free. And some places when it has to do with medical surgery, they can sometimes for free and sometimes in a subsidized.
So is it these people that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community are treating, are they people within the Ahmadiyya community?
No, it's not necessarily that you are part of. It's like a charity organization. Okay. This is regardless of your religion, your background, your race, regardless. The organization is not because we are Ahmadis, now we are preaching, unless you accept Ahmadiyya before we can do this for you. No. Well, even apart from that, there are different programs under this organization, like Knowledge for Life. Under it, schools are being built in less privileged societies, and under it too, Water for Life, where drinkable water is not accessible to people in the society. Water is being provided to them. And by mouth, the Khalifa of the fifth Caliph of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad Malabi, his helper, would go even to parliaments and to speak to political leaders in order to encourage them to fulfill the rights of man and also the rights of Allah the Almighty. And he would encourage Ahmadis to also pray for the world so that the world will become a better place to live in.
Thank you very much, Movie-Saab. Mr. Abbas, we know that you are an environmental, social, and governance expert. So my question now is going to be regarding environmental injustice. In another context, they say that Africa as a whole contribute less to CO2 consumption, but they are the one that is also being requested to pay more for the cause of climate change. So my question is, how does Islam address the concept of environmental injustice?
Okay, Jazakallah khairan for the question. I think it's a very interesting and topical question, being the fact that climate change is one of the hot topics around. COP28, in fact, was one of the conference of parties that focused on addressing climate injustices. So at the COP28, you have a progression of some of the effort global leaders have been making in terms of supporting less privileged countries to adapt to some of the vulnerabilities they are exposed to as a result of climate change. So there was this fund that was actually launched at COP28, and they call it the Loss and Damage Fund, right? To take you back very quickly, the Paris Agreement was actually, ratified in 2015 by over 100 countries in the world. I'm proud of that when you look at, all this discussion around sustainable development had started, since 1972. There was a report that came out at that time. They call it the Brundtland Commission report. And it talked about, how men have actually devastated, degraded the natural environment. And what this means is that it actually speaks to what the Quran has said. Quran, in Surah Al-Rum, Quran chapter 30, verse 42, Allah said, ظَهَرَ الْفَسَادُ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ بِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِي النَّاسِ لِنُذِيقَهُمْ بَعْضَ الَّذِي عَمِلُوا. Now, Allah said that there's been widespread corruption, degradation of environment, pollution, whether on the land or even in the sea. The Quran has said this several thousands of years ago, and now we are seeing the manifestation. Because interestingly, when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, it can come from the ocean is, a reservoir for GHG, greenhouse emission, as well as the atmosphere. And now Africa has contributed globally to just about 4% of the global emissions. But some of the worst impact of climate change will have to happen in some of these countries in Africa and other South-South nations that have not been part of these global emissions. Now, the idea is we are targeting net zero by 2060. But it has been recognized that there is what you call common but differentiated responsibility under the global framework that says that we all have a responsibility to respond to these catastrophic and existential threats. However, some need to do more than others.
So how does Islam?
So Islam addresses it in the point that recognizing the fact that the Quran says that وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا. Naturally, the concept of climate change is a natural one. You have all the various cycles, water cycles, carbon cycles, nitrogen cycles, that allows the earth to actually, recover from any loss that it has experienced. Now, even the Prophet ﷺ, as though the Prophet has foresaw what will happen, and the Prophet said in one of the hadith that says that in qamat ala ahadikum al-qiyamatu wa fi yadihi faslatun falyagrisha, that if there is ever a time when the qiyamah, the resurrection is going to come upon you, and you have a sapling in your hand, make sure you plant it before you die, before the resurrection. Now, we see a lot of talks around tree planting nowadays because trees are considered one of the important ways of sequestrating. And, sorry for the big English, sequestrating means you actually absorb, GHG emissions, CO2, methane, hydrogen sulfide, and all other green gases, from the atmosphere, and they are embodied into the tree, right? Now, the Prophet has given us one solid way out. It also tells us about afforestation, right? That we should plant more trees. We should not cut down trees needlessly. And that's why you see in a state like Lagos State in Nigeria, where we are, you would see that the Lagos State government has already created a department they call, they call it LASPAC, which is responsible for overseeing people to get permit before you even cut down any trees. Because of the rows of trees. In the southern part of Nigeria, for example, you see that they experience a lot of erosion.
Yeah.
And trees are very strong erosion. In the northern part, we experience a lot of desertification, right? The way we now build, the way we construct industries and everything, we consume a lot of resources. But the Quran has told us, Kulu washrabu wala tusrifu. You should eat and drink, but do not be extravagant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbas. Now, I want to turn on to my audience. I would like to is there anyone that has, contribution, question? Okay, can go.
So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
So, I'm Hussein Abdul Qayyum, a student of Lagos State University. So, I would just be adding to what the speakers have said already. So, as a student of a university, so it is normal to see different things that actually goes with either social justice or social injustice. And it is actually obvious in the university, schools, secondary schools, that social justice is actually taking over social injustice, like little by little. Let me say the Nigerian government is actually trying. So there was in 2017, the Nigerian law school still had this rule that you must follow a guideline that is a code of dressing, and that is that you, as a lady, should not put on the hijab. And it's
as
actually
a Muslim lady,
as a Muslim lady, yes, a Muslim lady, you are not expected to put on hijab as a code of conduct, a dressing code. So then there was this lady, a bar student, that she was supposed to graduate, but due to the code of conduct, the dressing code, she was not allowed to graduate. Then in 2018, she finally graduated. That was due to the Nigerian government following the article.
But before, because our viewers want to understand that interesting story that you are narrating.
Okay.
Something must have happened. She wasn't allowed to graduate.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, probably a year later, she was allowed to graduate. So what happened?
So
because this is a grave injustice.
Very well, it is a grave social injustice. So the Nigerian government was taken aback to the constitution, and in the constitution, according to what Barrister said, in chapter 4 of the constitution, that is section 38 of the 1999 constitution, which enshrines and stipulates that nobody, irrespective of who you are or your caste, your religion, you would be given the chance to practice your religion. So you give your thoughts, your conscience, and everything. So apart from that, the international human rights section, Article 19 of the Human Rights Charter of Human Rights, so also gave a brief explanation on that. So the Nigerian government, looking at that, was they were like, no, we don't have to go against the principles of natural justice.
Yeah.
And
so what you've just, that is a very interesting one there, because what you've just narrated to us is that there are a lot of social injustice that is systemized in most of our, in government organizations and even in our schools, that somehow, one way, injustice has permeated this system and has been in the system. So that a lot of this system needs to be overhauled and overlooked to eliminate all these injustice.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
My name is Arif Al-Munaim from the Lagos State University. So my question is that what should be done as a Muslim? What should be my reaction to, let me say, we're talking about social injustice, and there are so many people who have this personality of the LGBTQ and some other people's
So
belief.
when you say LGBTQ, what are you referring to?
I'm actually talking about this homosexual, and I'm talking about, so this is what I'm talking about. So what should be a Muslim reaction to such?
In any given country, there must be a constitution, which is the ground norm. Yeah. So what you are saying, as far as Nigeria is concerned, is not in the constitution of Nigeria. Nigeria does not allow homosexual. It is an offense. Yeah. So in such instance case, there is no ground for them for the movement they are propagating. You understand? So as a Muslim, it is your duty, you understand, to make sure that such is not encouraged in an environment where you are, because it is ordinarily against the constitution. We're not even talking about Islam this time around. We're talking about the constitution of a given state or society where you are. So what they are propagating, it is null and void.
Thank you very much, Barrister Bashiruddin, for that beautiful response. Now, we are going to listen to a few excerpts from Uzur, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad. May Almighty Allah be his helper as he gives us some advice and word of wisdom on social justice.
Sometimes local governments are established who, despite being from the same nation and from amongst the same people, do not fulfill the rights of their public. This leads to resentment amongst the masses. Consequently, from time to time, we find that in some countries, people stand up against their leaders in protest. And eventually, these protests reach extreme levels directly as a result of the frustration caused by the injustices of the rulers. Remember, in today's world, there can only be success and progress when peace is established and where conflicting views or policies do not impede the progress of one's nation. It is essential that you utilize your differences of opinion and policies to build your nation upon the very strongest foundations. Governments should look after their people with love, care, and justice. And in return, the people should show loyalty to their country. Africa, with the grace of Allah, has the ability to lead and guide the world. But you need to work hard and stay united to realize this potential so that instead of succumbing to enslavement, you are those who stand at the forefront of the world.
Welcome back, beloved viewers, as we've listened to our beloved Uzu advice. Now, I will be asking our panelists for their final thoughts on the topic of discourse, social justice in Islam. Mr. Abbas Agbaji, can you please give us your final thoughts on social justice?
So social justice, just to speak from the environmental perspective, it's important for us to bear in mind that whatever we do does not stay where we are. It affects other people. The Quran says, وَاتَّقُوا فِتْنَةً لَا تُصِيبَنَّ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْكُمْ خَاصَةً. You should be cognizant of those acts, that would not just affect the people involved, but would affect other people. So under environmental sustainability, we talked about things that happen in one place can affect other people in other places. So we must be responsible in our environment. We should consume resources and not waste resources in line with the teachings of the Quran. We should be responsible citizens, managing our waste and not cutting down trees, following some of the excellent teachings of the Quran, and of course, the teachings of the noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Jazakumullah khaira, Mr. Abbas. Mavi Sahib, your final advice to our viewers.
Right, as Muslims, we should spread social justice with our mouth, with our hands, and whatever means we have. And we should also respect others, just like it is embedded in the teachings of Islam. Show them the beautiful teachings of Islam. And we should not allow the enmity of other people to push us towards committing social injustice. Like Allah the Almighty has stated in the Quran, وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. That is, you should not allow the enmity of the people to for you to act against justice. اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. You should be just always, because that is nearer to righteousness. That is the teaching of the Holy Quran.
Thank you very much, Mavi Sahib. Barrister Bashiruddin, the final advice to our viewers.
Yes, I just want to say that social justice promote peace and unity in diversity. So every one of us should try and be an advocate of it. Because if we are able to do this, our society will be at peace. There will be a low rate of crimes as well. And a place where there is high rate of crime, we will never have peace in such society. So that is my own piece of advice for everyone. Be an advocate of social
justice. Thank you very much, esteemed panelists, for coming to the show and for sharing your wealth of experience with our viewers. Really appreciate you, Barrister Bashir, Mavi Abdulmujib Ayub Sahib, Mr. Abbas Agbaji. Thank you very much for coming on the show. And my beloved audience, thank you for coming to the show, and thank you for your contribution to the discourse of social justice in Islam. For questions, feedback, or queries, please reach out to us on africa@mta.ng. www.ecoscience.tv. Till another time will come your way. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.